What if I told you that the most powerful Christian movement in history was erased from your textbooks? What if the faith that once stretched from Syria to China, that built churches where Buddha once walked, was deliberately forgotten? What if everything you know about early Christianity is only half the story? Stay with me until the end of this journey, seeker, because what I'm about to reveal will shatter everything you thought you knew about the spread of Christ's message. We're going deeper into the forbidden history of Nestorianism, a movement so vast, so revolutionary, that empires trembled, and the church itself had to destroy it to survive. Welcome, seeker of hidden truths. You've found your way to a channel that dares to explore what others fear to touch. Today, we dive into waters so deep, so dangerous, that most historians won't even whisper these names. Are you ready? In the year 431 CE, something happened that changed the course of human history forever. But you've never heard about it, have you? In the ancient city of Ephesus, under the blazing Mediterranean sun, a council gathered. Not just any council, but a gathering that would decide the fate of millions of souls, yet unborn. At the center of this storm stood one man, Nestorius, Archbishop of Constantinople, a name that would be cursed by some, revered by others, and forgotten by most. But here's what they don't want you to know. Nestorius wasn't just a rebel. He wasn't just a heretic. He was the voice of a Christianity so pure, so untainted by political power, that it threatened to expose the greatest deception in religious history. Let's go deeper. Picture this moment with me. The year is 428. The Roman Empire is at its peak of Christian power. Constantine's dream has become reality. The cross now rules where Caesar once stood. But something is wrong. Something is rotting at the heart of this new Christian empire. The church has become political. Bishops wear crowns. Prayers are said for emperors. The message of the carpenter from Nazareth has been dressed in imperial robes. Enter Nestorius. This man, this simple monk from the mountains of Syria, looks at what Christianity has become and says the words that will echo through eternity. This is not what Christ intended. But it's not just politics that troubles Nestorius. It's something deeper. Something that cuts to the very heart of who Jesus was and what it means to be human in the presence of the divine. You see, in those days, there was a growing belief, a dangerous idea spreading through the Christian world. They called it the divine nature of Mary. Not just respect for the mother of Jesus, but worship. They began calling her Theotokos, the God-bearer, the mother of God. And Nestorius, this fearless truth-seeker, stood up and said, "Stop." Mary, Nestorius declared, gave birth to a man who carried the divine. But she is not the mother of God himself. She is Christokos, the Christ-bearer. A Christ-bearer. Can you feel the earthquake these words created? In a single sentence, Nestorius had challenged the entire power structure of the church. Because if Mary wasn't the mother of God, if Jesus was truly, fully human in his earthly form, then what did that say about the nature of divinity itself? What did it say about you and me, and our own potential to carry the divine? This was the question that terrified them. This was the truth they had to bury. Let's go deeper into the mystery. To understand why Nestorianism became the most feared movement in Christian history, you have to understand what Nestorius actually taught. And I promise you, this will change how you see everything. Nestorius believed in something revolutionary: the two natures of Christ, not mixed together like ingredients in a bowl, but existing separately, distinctly, in perfect harmony. The human Jesus and the divine Christ. Two persons in one body. But why does this matter, you might ask? Because it means that Jesus experienced what you experience. The doubt, the fear, the pain, the very human struggle to connect with the divine. When Jesus cried out on the cross, "My God, why have you forsaken me?" That was the human Jesus, experiencing the same spiritual darkness we all face. But simultaneously, the divine Christ was present, never abandoning, never leaving. This wasn't just theology. This was a roadmap for human consciousness. Nestorius was teaching that we too can experience this dual nature. We can be fully human while carrying the divine. Can you see why they had to stop him? But the real threat of Nestorianism wasn't just its theology. It was its implications for power. If every human being could carry the divine, if you didn't need a priest to access God, if the church wasn't the sole gateway to salvation, then what happened to the entire system of religious control? What happened to the tithing, the pilgrimages, the fear-based compliance that kept millions under the thumb of religious authority? Nestorianism was democracy of the spirit. It was Christianity without the chains. And so they gathered at Ephesus, not to seek truth, but to destroy it. Let's go deeper into this ancient conspiracy. The Council of Ephesus was theater, political theater wrapped in the costume of religious debate. Cyril of Alexandria, the master manipulator, had arrived with enough gold to buy half the city. He made his backroom deals, secured his votes, before Nestorius even arrived. But here's what really happened, the part they don't teach in seminary. Nestorius was invited to defend his beliefs. But when he arrived, the council had already started without him. They'd already voted. They'd already condemned him. The trial was over before the accused even entered the room. This wasn't justice. This was assassination by committee. But Nestorius, this mountain of a man, even our end, this seeker of truth, did something that shocked everyone. He refused to recant. Even facing exile, poverty, death, he stood firm. "I will not call the 2-month-old infant in the manger God," he declared. Those words sealed his fate, but they also sealed his immortality. Now here's where the story gets really mystical, really powerful. You might think that condemnation by the church would kill a movement, that exile would end the message. But the opposite happened. Like trying to kill a river by building a dam, the water just finds another way. Nestorian missionaries began flowing eastward, beyond the reach of Roman power, beyond the control of established churches, into Persia, into India, into the steppes of Central Asia, into China itself. And everywhere they went, they planted seeds of this radical Christianity, this faith without empire, this message of divine potential in every human soul. By the year 800, there were Nestorian churches from Baghdad to Beijing. From the Caspian Sea to the Indian Ocean, they'd created the largest Christian network in human history. But you've never heard about it, have you? Let's go deeper into this hidden empire. Picture this. While European Christianity was drowning in the Dark Ages, while knowledge was being burned and scholars persecuted, Nestorian monks were translating Aristotle into Arabic. They were preserving Greek philosophy. They were building libraries that would later spark the Islamic Golden Age. In Baghdad, Nestorian Christians served as advisors to Muslim caliphs. In China, they were honored guests at the imperial court. In India, they established communities that survive to this day. They weren't conquistadors. They weren't crusaders. They were bridge builders, truth sharers. They showed the world that Christianity could adapt, could learn, could grow, without losing its soul. But here's the part that will blow your mind. These Nestorian communities developed practices that wouldn't appear in Western Christianity for another 1,000 years. Meditation techniques that sound like Buddhist mindfulness. Breathing exercises that mirror Hindu pranayama. A mystical approach to prayer that would later inspire Sufi Islam. They were discovering that truth, real truth, has no borders. And then, the great forgetting began. As Roman Christianity solidified its power in the West, as the Catholic Church became the sole interpreter of Christian truth, the story of Nestorianism was systematically erased. Their books were burned. Their churches were destroyed. Their very existence was written out of history. When European explorers finally reached China in the 13th century, they found Marco Polo writing about thriving Christian communities that had been there for centuries. Communities that followed practices Rome had never seen. Communities that claimed descent from Thomas, the apostle himself. But instead of celebrating this diversity, instead of learning from this ancient wisdom, they condemned it, called it heretical, tried to force these ancient churches to submit to papal authority. Many refused, and so they were abandoned, left to survive on their own, while Rome pretended they'd never existed. Let's go deeper into what we've lost. Have you ever wondered why Eastern spirituality seems so different from Western Christianity? Why Buddhism speaks of consciousness, while Christianity speaks of sin? Why Hinduism embraces mystery, while Christianity demands certainty? The answer might lie in what Nestorianism preserved, and what Roman Christianity threw away. Nestorian texts speak of the luminous mind that exists in every person. They describe prayer as a journey inward, not a petition upward. They see Christ not as a distant savior, but as a pattern of consciousness that we can all embody. This wasn't heresy. This was the original mystery teaching of Christianity. The secret that Jesus shared with his inner circle. The truth that Paul hinted at when he wrote about Christ in you, the hope of glory. But it was too dangerous for an imperial church, too empowering for people who were meant to be subjects, not participants. So they buried it, called it Nestorianism, made it forbidden. But truth, real truth, can never really die. And this is where our story takes an unexpected turn, because Nestorianism didn't just disappear. It went underground. It influenced other movements. It planted seeds that would sprout centuries later in unexpected places. The mystics of medieval Europe, Meister Eckhart, Julian of Norwich, were they influenced by hidden Nestorian texts? The Reformation itself, with its emphasis on personal relationship with God, does it echo Nestorian teachings about the divine potential in every soul? Even today, in the quantum revolution in physics, in the consciousness studies emerging from neuroscience, in the integration of Eastern and Western wisdom, can you see the fingerprints of this ancient teaching? The idea that consciousness and matter, that divine and human, that infinite and finite exist not as opposites, but as complementary aspects of one greater mystery. Let's go deeper into what this means for you. Here's what they don't want you to realize. The debate that raged around Nestorianism, the question of whether Christ had one nature or two, wasn't really about Jesus. It was about you. It was about whether human beings are fundamentally flawed creatures in need of external salvation, or whether we carry within us the very spark of divinity itself. Nestorius believed, and his followers still believe, that you are not broken. You are not separate from the divine. You are not a beggar pleading for scraps from heaven's table. You are a Christ-bearer, a Christokos, a human being capable of embodying the same consciousness that Jesus demonstrated, the same love, the same wisdom, the same power to transform reality through aligned action. This is the secret they buried. This is the truth they made heretical. But it's still here, still true, still available to anyone brave enough to claim it. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. This sounds too good to be true. If this wisdom was so powerful, why didn't it survive? Why did Nestorianism fade away? The answer will surprise you. It didn't fade away. It transformed. When the Mongols swept across Asia in the 13th century, many Nestorian communities were destroyed. When Islam expanded, others converted or were absorbed. When European colonialism arrived, the remaining churches were often pressured to conform to Roman doctrines. But the ideas, the practices, the understanding, these didn't die. They flowed into Sufism. They influenced Eastern Orthodox mysticism. They helped shape the philosophical foundations of Islamic Spain. They contributed to the Renaissance rediscovery of ancient wisdom. Even today, if you know where to look, if you know how to see, you can find Nestorian fingerprints everywhere. In the Assyrian Church of the East, which still exists and still practices forms of worship that would have been familiar to Nestorius himself. In the Mar Thoma Christians of India, who claim unbroken descent from Thomas the Apostle, in the mystical traditions that speak of divine union without losing human authenticity. Let's go deeper into the practical implications. So what does this mean for your spiritual journey? What does this forgotten history offer to someone seeking truth in the 21st century? First, it means you have permission to question everything. If the church could be wrong about Nestorianism, if they could condemn and erase one of the most successful Christian movements in history, what else might they have gotten wrong? Second, it means you don't have to choose between being human and being spiritual. The Nestorian teaching of two natures, the recognition that divine and human can coexist in perfect harmony. This gives you a framework for wholeness. You don't have to deny your humanity to access your divinity. You don't have to transcend your feelings to find God. You don't have to escape the world to enter the kingdom. You can be fully, authentically human, while simultaneously awake to the divine consciousness that flows through all things. Third, it means that truth is bigger than any one tradition. The Nestorian ability to dialogue with Buddhism, Hinduism, Islam, their openness to learning from other paths. This shows us what authentic spirituality looks like, not threatened by difference, not insecure in its convictions, but confident enough in truth to recognize it wherever it appears. But here's the deeper mystery. Why is this story emerging now? Why is the hidden history of Nestorianism becoming available just when humanity seems to be awakening to a new level of consciousness? Maybe it's because we're ready to move beyond the religious wars that have plagued our species, ready to embrace both our humanity and our divinity, ready to build bridges instead of walls. The Nestorian vision of Christianity, inclusive, mystical, practical, might be exactly what our world needs right now. A spirituality that doesn't require you to check your brain at the door. A faith that embraces mystery without abandoning reason. A path that recognizes the divine in every person, regardless of their religious background or lack thereof. This isn't just history we're exploring. This is prophecy. This is a blueprint for the future of human consciousness. Let's go deeper into what that future might look like. Imagine a world where the wisdom of all traditions is honored, where the insights of science and spirituality dance together, where every person knows their own divine nature while remaining beautifully, authentically human. This was the Nestorian dream. This was the vision that Rome had to destroy because it threatened the power structures of their time. But power structures change. Empires fall. Truth remains. And now, in our interconnected world, in this age of global communication and shared knowledge, maybe the time has come for this ancient wisdom to resurface, not as a new religion, not as another denomination, but as a recognition of what we've always been, what we've always had the potential to become: Christ bearers, light carriers, human beings awake to the divine nature that is our birthright. The Nestorians knew this secret. They lived it. They spread it across continents and cultures. And now, it's our turn. But remember this, seeker. Knowledge without application is just entertainment. Wisdom without embodiment is just philosophy. The real question isn't whether Nestorianism was right or wrong about the nature of Christ. The real question is, what will you do with the understanding that you too can be a Christ bearer? How will you embody the divine while honoring your humanity? How will you build bridges instead of walls? How will you carry light into the darkness of our world? These aren't theological questions. These are practical, everyday, moment-by-moment choices. The choice to see the divine in the homeless person you pass on the street. The choice to respond to anger with compassion. The choice to recognize that the same consciousness that flowed through Jesus flows through you. And this brings us to the ultimate mystery, the final secret that the Nestorians understood and that we're only beginning to rediscover. The kingdom of heaven isn't a place you go to when you die. It's not a reward for good behavior. It's not something external that you earn or achieve. The kingdom of heaven is a state of consciousness, a way of being, a recognition of what's always been true. It's the moment when you stop seeing yourself as separate from the divine and start experiencing yourself as an expression of it. It's the moment when you stop asking God to fix your life and start realizing that you are the way God acts in the world. It's the moment when you stop waiting for salvation and start being it. This is what Nestorius taught. This is what his followers lived. This is the truth that empires tried to bury. But truth, real truth, is like a seed in the ground. You can cover it with dirt. You can pile rocks on top of it. You can pretend it's not there. But when the conditions are right, when the time has come, it pushes through everything and reaches for the light. So here we are, at the end of our journey into the forbidden history of Nestorianism. But really, we're at the beginning, because now you know what they didn't want you to know. You know that Christianity is bigger than Rome taught. You know that truth is larger than any single tradition claimed. You know that you, yes, you, carry within yourself the same divine spark that illuminated the Christ. The question now is, what will you do with this knowledge? Will you go back to sleep? Will you pretend you never heard this story? Or will you step into the fullness of who you really are? Will you become what the Nestorians always knew you could be? A living bridge between heaven and earth, between human and divine, between what is and what could be. The choice, seeker, is yours. It always has been. But now you remember. If this journey has awakened something in you, if you feel the stirring of ancient wisdom in your bones, then share this video with someone who needs to hear it. The truth that was buried for centuries is emerging again. And you are part of that emergence. Comment below and tell me, what resonated most deeply with you? What questions does this raise about your own spiritual journey? And if you're ready to go even deeper into the hidden mysteries of consciousness and spirituality, subscribe now, because this is just the beginning of what we're going to explore together. Until next time, remember, you are not just seeking the truth. You are the truth, seeking itself.